Hi, I'm Chas with Chas's Crazy Creations. Welcome to Home Talk. Today we are going to make an easy scarecrow decoration for your yard. Let's get started. I'm going to be using this 4x4 piece of wood from a previous project that I have, so it's scrap wood for me, but you could easily do this with a 2x4 or a fence picket or anything that suits your needs. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a sanding block and I'm just going to lightly sand the wood. I just don't want to get any like slivers from it. So I'm going to sand all the sides, at least the three that are going to be more visible. It's up to you if you want to do the back, and then I'm going to lightly sand the top and bottom. Now if you want a smoother surface, you can sand more if you want. Once I'm done sanding, I'm going to go ahead and wipe it all clean. I want to free it from all the sawdust so that when I paint it doesn't clog up the paintbrush or any of my paint. The next step I'm going to do is kind of map out where I kind of want each section of the scarecrow to be. So I'm just gonna kind of section off different areas for his hat, his shirt, and so on and so forth. For this first section of painting right here, I'm gonna be painting it blue, but I don't want it to go higher than this. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some painter's tape there to stop it from going into the next section. I'm going to be using Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Nautical for this bottom half. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint on this paint, and this paint is just chalk paint. You can use acrylic paint. You can kind of use whatever paint you'd like to. Again, as I always say, you'll want to decide based on where you're going to put it what you might want to paint it with. So if it's gonna sit in the elements, you might pick a different paint that's better for outdoor use, and or it'll explain to you if you need to add a top coat to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint the sides so that I hit all three angles. Again, the back is optional. Once that's all painted, I'm gonna go ahead and peel off the painter's tape and let it dry. Meanwhile, while that is drying, I've added some more tape to the opposite end, and I'm going to use Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Mustard to do his hat. And just like before, I'm just going to go ahead and paint three sides with this paint, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint the top up here as well. So now I'm gonna work on the shirt. So I've taped off both the blue section that went up to here, and then this will be the face, so I wanna keep the red section here. I'm gonna be using Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Imperial. Of course, you could choose any colors you want, so it's really a personal preference of the design you'd like to make your scarecrow. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the three sides with this red paint, and then we'll move on to the next step. While I'm waiting, I have one more section on the scarecrow to paint still, but while that's drying, I've got a paint stir stick here, and I'm just going to mark right here, and I'm gonna use a saw, and I'm just gonna cut this off. And just like before, I'm just gonna go ahead and sand the edge that I cut, and then of course wipe it clean. This is actually going to be the bill of the hat, or the framework of the hat, however you want to look at that. So I'm going to use the same paint as the hat, which was the Mustard Home Decor chalk paint, to paint this one so that it will match. And I'm going to just paint the top, but then I'm going to go ahead and paint the edges too, just because I want them to be good and coated. Now for this last section here, you could leave it as is, but I'm gonna go ahead and paint it with Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in the color Sheepskin. And we'll just paint this last section here with that color, and then it'll be time to move to the next step, which is putting the scarecrow together and embellishing him. Now, how many coats you wanna use is up to you. So for me, right now, I'm feeling like the one coat is good enough, but you could easily do more coats depending upon the look you're going for. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the three sides with this, and we'll let it dry completely before we move on. So now we're gonna start working on the face, and I'm gonna use a little Mod Podge here to get started. So I'm gonna add a little Mod Podge right up here to the top, and it goes on white and dries clear, so you don't have to worry about if you get a little extra on there. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of straw here and add it for some hair. Now you could use twine, you could use string, you could skip this step. It's kind of a personal preference as to what you want to have for your hair, or maybe you don't want any. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here. We're gonna let this dry and then we're gonna attach the rim. Next, while that's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and set the rim on top and let that dry as well. Next, we're gonna go ahead and add 2 button eyes. So I'm gonna put a little hot glue on there, and then I'm gonna place it on the eye where I want the eyes to go. And then I'll do that again on the other side. With the marker, I'm gonna go ahead and draw in a nose and color it in. You could easily use some paint here if you'd rather have that as well. Then next I'm gonna use a permanent marker to draw his mouth. And again, you could use paint. I sometimes feel like I have better control with markers, but it's really a preference. And then of course, again, where are you gonna be setting it? Because sometimes markers will bleed. Now I've got an old bandana here and I'm just going to cut a square out of it. So again, it's a scarecrow too, so you can choose how perfect you want things to be, or do you want them to be a little ragged? Because when you think of scarecrows, sometimes I think of imperfection and things being just stuffed together. So now you can mess with your shape however you're gonna want to, but for me, I'm gonna go ahead and fold it into a triangle here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and fold it down twice to create a handkerchief for my scarecrow. Now what I'm gonna do with this is I'm going to put it right here on his neck, and I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this around and hot glue the ends in the back. If it's long enough, you're welcome to tie it if you like that idea better. Now here's how he looks on the front side. And if you wanna see what he looks like on the back, I just hot glued those right there, but again, you could easily, tie it if it's long enough for you. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna keep embellishing. So one of the things you could do is take a little more of the straw and glue it in here if you want. Hot glue or Mod Podge works. We're also gonna make a belt for him next, and then we're gonna talk about his hat a little bit. So for his belt, I have just a little bit of this rope. It came from the dollar store, and I'm just going to go ahead and tie it around him. Again, if you are struggling to get it to hold, you can always hot glue it into place, but I'm just gonna go ahead and make a little knot here, and then that's gonna be his belt. So I think he needs a little bit more. So I'm gonna go add a couple buttons here, and you could add pockets to him if you wanted to. It's kind of your preference, but I'm gonna put a couple buttons here with some hot glue. Now you could add maybe a little sunflower here. I might look for one of those down the road. But one thing I think is that I want him to have more of a straw hat look. You could easily draw a bunch of lines if you want, but I just went ahead and I took a pencil and marked kind of where I wanted these little hashtag marks to kind of create that straw hat feel on him. Now you could add more of those or keep that as is. Here he is all finished up. So let's go ahead and put him on display. Here he is all ready for display. Indoors or out, the choice is yours. Again, I'm Chas from Chas's Crazy Creations. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and I'll see you next time.